Okay, welcome back, Vendetta Sports Fantasy Show. Today is Sunday, August 23rd. We have Scott Logush, Adam Ramirez, myself, Trey Daubert. Of course, we're brought to you by VendettaSportsMedia.com. What's up, fellas? You got any opening remarks here before we start the show? All right, fair enough. Uh, so the segment I had planned for today was sort of fantasy hot takes because every single year there's somebody that surprises you. We don't really see it coming. Last year, perfect example. Nobody really drafted Lamar Jackson high. He's QB1 by a mile. I'm not sure anybody said Lamar Jackson was QB1. So let's go fantasy hot takes here. Something that's an unpopular opinion, but something you sort of believe to be true. Adam, we'll start with you here first. What is your fantasy hot take number one?
It's interesting that you bring up Lamar Jackson as an example because my hot take is actually that he's going to not be a top 15 quarterback this season. And here's the reason why. So I'm going with the opposite kind of motivation that people had last year. So I think that his play and the way he quarterbacks is not sustainable given the body type that he has. And I thought that he got so lucky last year on so many plays where he should have been injured either because of the way he was moving or the way he was hit. And we're going now into the season in 2020 where they haven't had a lot of time on the field. He hasn't had a chance to take those hits, and I also don't think he's had a chance to put on some weight. So reason I think he's not going to be a top 15 is because I don't think he's going to play for most of the season. I think at some point, possibly early on, he's going to take a hit that's going to get him out of that lineup. And not saying that while he's in there, he won't still perform to somewhat close to the level of last year, but I just don't think he's going to be in there enough in order to do that from a fantasy perspective.
There's a couple things here. Number one, his touchdown rate last year is pretty much unsustainable. Even if he's good, I believe he threw a touchdown on 9% of his throws or something like that, which is flat out insane. Like, even if he's good, that's not going to happen. And your second point is, like, he's not practicing right now. He has a groin injury. He has not seen the field so far. He's been out all of camp, and they're really concerned about him so far, so much to the point, like, they don't know if he's going to even practice the next 2 weeks. So I think you could very easily be right, and I've said this, that at some point I do think the wheels will fall off here because we've never seen somebody like this do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I'm seeing some draft boards that are having people take him over Mahomes, and I'm never going to use a quarter, especially in a snake draft or even in an auction. I'm never going to use either a lot of money on an auction or a really high round pick on a snake draft for a quarterback because there's just so many out there, even in two quarterback leagues. But I especially would not use it to take him over someone like Mahomes.
Scott, you have anything to add?
I agree with this because his touchdown rate is just flat out unsustainable. He will not do that again under any circumstances. And two, just the style of football he plays isn't sustainable. A mobile quarterback at his size just isn't sustainable. All it takes is one bad hit and he's done.
Yeah, I want to ask Adam this too, because one of the things I said about Trubisky when he had a really good year was a lot of that offense was smoke and mirrors. Like, Matt Nagy was really trying his best to fool guys every single week, and eventually he just ran out of things. With Lamar Jackson, they're running a lot of like zone read. It looked like the Kaepernick offense in San Francisco. How, like, is this an offense that's even like sustainable? Like, can Greg Roman continue to fool people like this?
I think it's like anything else. Defenses kind of wise up and they learn how to beat a team like Baltimore. So their offensive system, you can't have a heavy package out there on defense with four defensive linemen and three heavy linebackers. You need to spread it out. You need to be in either a nickel formation, even if they only have two receivers out there, because you need to have someone accounting for Lamar. The minute that you load up on speed on the defensive side of the ball, which the Chargers did during that playoff loss 2 years ago where Baltimore Lamar Jackson just played horribly against them, and it's because they were having out a huge speed on the field to stop them. So I don't think that the Ravens are going to surprise anyone this year. And like I said, I think that there's a recipe to stop him, and even if there isn't, I don't think he's going to be sticking around long enough to put up numbers.
Yeah, I think Tennessee did a hell of a job too last year, game planning
Yep.
for him. Scott, what is your number one takeaway or hot take here? What do you
I'm
got?
just going to add one more thing onto Adam's point about the Chargers loss 2 years ago. That was the second time the Chargers played the Ravens that year. So it goes to show that once you've, A, played Lamar, or B, have enough film on him, you can find a way to stop him. And then going into my second pick is that Aaron Rodgers won't be a top 15 fantasy. He won't be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He might float around in 15, but he won't be a top 10. And this is in part of the offense just isn't built for him anymore. We've talked about this multiple times based on the Packers draft. They're building for the future. They're trying to minimize Aaron Rodgers' role in that offense by loading up at the running back position because they got their asses handed to them by San Francisco, and they want to be able to do that to other people. Now, I'm not saying Rodgers is going to fall off a cliff, but he's not going to be top 10 because he's not going to have the opportunities and he doesn't have the weapons to do so.
Yeah, I think we've kind of talked about this a lot, but it feels like the people that are big into name power will draft Rodgers high, but I'm not sure any real fantasy players are drafting or like overdrafting Aaron Rodgers because it's Aaron Rodgers. Adam, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm kind of looking forward to see him dropping in some of these drafts. Just because he's had a couple of off years, but he's also been surrounded by injuries, not necessarily to him, but to players around him. And I think this year you're coming in with Aaron Jones, who's not going to replicate the touchdown volume from last year, but you still have Devontae Adams, and they added Devin Funchess, who opted out. But like the point is that you still have a lot of young pieces in there. Like Alan Lazard, I think is going to have a decent year. I saw a lot of promise from him in last season. So I think that second year in a system is always beneficial, especially to a guy as smart as Aaron Rodgers. So I wouldn't say. Did you say top 15 or top 10? Because I think he for sure cracks top 15, and I would put money. I would put money that he cracks top 10.
Do we have a bet here?
How many bets would this be then?
I don't know.
Third
I think that's a good point because he talked about the injuries, right? And Rodgers, I think Devontae Adams missed 4 weeks last year. I'll have to go back and double check. But Rodgers was brutal when Devontae Adams didn't play those 4 weeks. If Adams is on the field, there's no reason to think that, he's just going to throw him the ball the whole time, and he should put up at least decent enough numbers.
Yeah, I think it's also worth looking at the defenses in that division. So when you look at Minnesota and Chicago, and for the past 2 years, that's accounted for 4 games. So potentially a third of most people's fantasy seasons. And those defense, I think, are both going to take a step back this year. I don't think Chicago added anything substantial to that defense, and Minnesota's players are essentially the same every single year. So they're getting old. So I think that's going to be an opening for Rodgers to also have better numbers against those teams in his division.
All right, I'll go to mine here. And again, we are brought to you by vendettasportsmedia.com. Make sure to follow Adam Ramirez Sports, I believe. That is the Twitter handle. Logush52, myself, Trey Daubert. So I want to talk about Rams rookie running back Cam Akers. And I've seen him kind of downish into the 25-30 range for rankings. I think my hot take is going to be he's a top 10 back for fantasy. Last year, Todd Gurley in standard leagues, non-PPR, he was running back 12. I think regardless, the touchdown should be there for Cam Akers. And Todd Gurley was RB12 with basically no receiving volume and 857 total rushing yards. I don't see any reason why Cam Akers can't come step right in there, who performed pretty well at Florida State, despite the fact that he had a terrible offensive line in college. The Rams' offensive line isn't much better, but, he was running behind brutal offensive lines in college. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the rookie that's getting a lot of hype here. Don't be surprised if Cam Akers has a really good year, and nobody's really paying attention to him.
I think he can be the best running back out of that backfield. You want to go for it, Scott?
No, you go first. You already started.
I think he could be the best running back out of that backfield. I don't think he's going to crack top 10. I think Sean McVay has learned from his mistake with Gurley. He learned what happens when you pound one running back who's not pretty much Derrick Henry for an entire season, and then you get into the playoffs trying to get that same level of production. So I think he's seen what a team like San Francisco has done with being able to utilize so many running backs throughout the season and always having someone different step up even in the playoffs. So I think he's really going to go running back by committee. I think Cam Akers could be the best one out of there, but not top 10.
One thing I'd say is that with the Rams, their offense was atrocious, and they don't have any threat outside of the running back position because we've talked about how Jared Goff isn't able to get it done. Sean McVay is running out of plays and the offensive line. A running back, as they progress in the levels of football, like going from high school to college to the NFL, it gets much harder for a running back to overcome a poor offensive line, a poor quarterback, and overall a poor offensive situation. You can do it in high school, no problem. College, it gets a lot harder, but you can still do it. You just can't do that in the NFL.
I just think we bang on Todd Gurley because he wasn't productive last year, but he was still the 12th best running back in fantasy. So as like the biggest question mark here is, you're right, it's going to be the workload. I just think if there's a chance that maybe he doesn't see the amount of volume that Gurley did, but if he's better from an efficiency standpoint and he's still the lead back, I don't see why he can't have a really, really good fantasy year. And especially because I think if they thought Darrell Henderson was good, and you can weigh in on this, but if they thought Darrell Henderson was really good, I think they would have used him a hell of a lot more than they did last year. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but it just feels like what's your plan with Darrell Henderson? Why didn't you use him last year?
I mean, I think you could have said the same thing a couple of years ago when Shanahan started building the Niners and you had Jerick McKinnon, and then you still went after a guy like Tevin Coleman. So having one guy that you think can be a productive running back, I don't think no longer does it in this league. And so I don't think that they've given up on Henderson, but I think that they realize we have a potential in Henderson to be a running back in our rotation, and then we're adding another one in Akers. Running back on rookie contracts are just so cheap that you can afford to have more than one easily. And I think McVay and the Rams are doing that. They don't have any other choice. They can't afford to pay anyone else.
Where would you rank Akers? Is he like fairly ranked? Is he a top 20? Where would you put him?
I think he's an RB2, so top 24. But high-end ceiling, I don't think he gets to RB1, so I don't think he becomes a top 12 running back.
All right, let's go to you then. What is your second hot take here?
Pick this one just for you because I know you're a hater.
I'm a hater.
What else is new?
The new quarterback in Tampa Bay is going to be a top 5 quarterback for fantasy this year.
Hey, I'll take that bet right now.
Top 5.
All right, let's hear it.
Here's why. It's funny because I'm actually using every other player on that team as like a measuring stick for why it could happen. So in order for him not to have the numbers to be in that position, you would have to have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, and every single running back in that rotation have an off year. All of their numbers would have to be cut almost by a quarter in terms of yardage and in terms of points in order to not keep Brady in the top 5. I don't think that's going to happen. I think all of those guys are going to get their numbers. I don't think Brady needs the giant rocket arm that he gets dinged for so much. I think the players can do a lot with catch and run plays. You have weapons all over the field. There's no way any defense can defend Godwin, Evans, O.J. Howard, and Gronkowski on top of the running backs. So I think it's going to be a dink and dunk offense because that's what Brady has mastered in the past few years. And Bruce Arians is brilliant at game planning around who he has. So what we saw in terms of a jump up when Carson Palmer took over in Arizona, I think is going to be very similar to what we see in Tampa Bay. So top 5 for Tom Brady.
Wow.
Yep.
Some of the one of the biggest concerns with like pure ceiling is, does he get you any rushing potential? That would be like almost my number one concern at this point, because it's really hard. Like Kyler Murray, I think he was quarterback 7 last year, and he really didn't do much.
Yep.
It was a lot of rushing. Like that's the number one thing that gets me. Like he's almost got to get like 5 quarterback sneaks in.
Yeah, and I mean, in this offense, you know that they're going to be down at the goal line frequently, and there's no team or there's no quarterback probably that has gotten more 1-yard touchdowns from from that goal line than Tom Brady. So I can see that happening. I can see those extra 6 points coming in on a every other week or so basis for.
I've been
for
trying
teams
to think of like how Brady could be the quarterback 5. He would basically have to have like 4,500 yards and like 35 touchdowns, around that mark.
Yep. And so you think, right, Evans and Godwin, both at least 1,000-yard receivers, that already accounts for nearly half of that amount. So can he get the other 2,000 by throwing to his 2 amazing tight ends and the running back committee that he has? I think he can do it.
Scott, what do you have? Something that doesn't have to do with the offensive line, because you bring up the offensive line
because
every
I've
time.
just been like harping on that point every time. It's going to be – we talk about Gronk being this amazing tight end. He hasn't been that for the past couple of years. Like, injuries have just overtaken him. His body can't handle it anymore. And I don't think he – even after taking a year off, he wasn't doing football activities in that year off. I think we can all agree that that simply wasn't the case. Gronk's not going to be this great tight end that we remember him for. He's going to be solid, but he's not going to be amazing this year.
You know what's crazy? I've actually started to think about this, and I almost feel like there's a chance that Gronk steals a lot of Evans' touchdowns. I don't know how you feel about this, Adam, but it almost feels like to me if they have a chance to get in close, that Gronk will be a touchdown stealer, and it will really hurt the receivers in terms of value.
I don't see that. I think as especially as they get closer to the goal line, all the attention is going to be on Gronk. So if you're going to get a middle linebacker and a safety on him in that goal line, so that's going to free up both Godwin and Evans for one-on-one coverage. So I can see them benefiting from that much more than Gronk. And to your point, Scott, like even if he doesn't get the receptions, at the end of the day, until he proves otherwise, he's still a decoy in that offense.
I definitely am willing to take double the bet with you, though. That's up to you, though.
All right, got 2 bets going on today.
We'll have to figure out the terms.
2 bets on the same take?
We'll figure out the terms. Scott, what do you got here? Hot take number 2. I don't know why I keep saying that.
Well, mine is going to be Cam Newton will not be a top 15 fantasy quarterback this year. And this is in large part due to the cast in New England. They have absolutely no weapons on that offense. You have an old, banged-up Julian Edelman. You have no one at tight end. You have a running back by committee. He's just not going to be able to produce.
I have no idea what to do with Cam Newton. I wrote that article earlier in the year that it just feels like his range of outcomes is outrageous. I just don't know. Adam, what do you got?
I think, again, similar argument to what I said earlier for Brady going the opposite way. If we have Cam in the top 15, that means you're going to have guys like N'Keal Harry and Julian Edelman and James White all accounting for pretty decent yardage and touchdowns in order to get Cam Newton there, assuming he's there the entire 16 games. And I don't know. I think I have no idea what his shoulder is like. So I don't know if he's even going to be able to throw for those games. So to kind of, I see him rising in some draft boards, and I would not be willing to take a chance on him, given, again, how many other quarterbacks there are out there, but primarily because I have no idea whether he's going to even be able to make it through the season.
His rushing has to be really good for him to really pan out as a fantasy quarterback.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll give my last one, and I don't even feel good about this one, and I even hate projecting this. I guess that's why it's a hot take, but I'm going to go Damian Harris is the lead running back at the end of the year, not in the beginning of the year, the end of the year, final 8 weeks for the Patriots. I don't even feel good about it. I hate it. But we talk about the Patriots running backs, and it's probably better off to avoid it, but I think there are serious concerns with Sony Michel's knees. It doesn't feel like he's healthy. It seems like he's a ticking time bomb. James White is what he is. He's going to give you the passing down work, but I think there's a chance Damian Harris is really good. At Alabama, he wasn't Josh Jacobs, but he was right there. He was the starter at Alabama. He was getting a lot of work. There was 2 consecutive years he averaged over 7 yards a carry. I think he's a pretty good running back. So I'm not really worried about Lamar Miller, and I even hate projecting this, and who the hell knows with Patriots running backs, but I would keep an eye on Damian Harris. I just think there's a chance that Belichick was kind of having him learn the offense, getting him ready, and maybe final 8 weeks of the year, he's really good.
Yeah, that's not a crazy take. And I think regardless of what happens at quarterback, if Cam is in there or if he goes down and it's either Hoyer or Stidham show,
Stidham.
Stidham, it's either it's going to be a running game. It's going to be a running type of offense. And I think Bill is going to try to go back to his roots when he first landed in New England, and even prior to that, where he wanted a strong defense and a strong running game. He's a master at building around what he has. He knows he doesn't have certainty at quarterback. He knows he has a stacked running back room. So I think they're going to be big on the rushing game, and I can see Harris getting most of the totes towards the end of the year.
Scott?
It's just almost impossible to project
I know.
New England Patriots running backs, like especially outside of a PPR league, because in a PPR league, you know James White's going to be the best simply because he just gets a ridiculous amount of receptions and targets. Well, since we're not doing PPR, since you are against PPR, you've made this very well known, you just can't project them because you have no idea what Bill is going to be thinking. You have no idea who's going to have the hot hand. You just have no idea what the hell is going to happen with the Patriots.
I'm really bad with years, but I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago LeGarrette Blount led the league in touchdowns. I just think
something like that.
I don't know. I think he had 17 or something like that one year. I just think it's important to note that this is a team around the goal line. They're going to get a lot of rushing opportunities. You pick the right guy, depending on who it is, and we don't really know who it is. But if he's consistent over an 8-week stretch during a fantasy playoffs, I think you could be looking at a real steal. I just think it's an important flyer. Maybe you don't even take it, but maybe it's a waiver claim later on.
Yeah, it's probably exactly what it would be. Waiver claim at some point, because by then who knows what the Patriots might have done. They might have traded for Frank Gore and he's going to be, your leading back.
2016, LeGarrette Blount had 18 rushing touchdowns.
My gosh.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's an offense that you don't really want, but that could happen.
Yep.
All right, it's our favorite time of the week.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Who the fuck is that guy? Guy you never heard of, guy you will never draft. Somehow, some way, he will win you your fantasy league. Scott, who is your selection for this week?
Cedric Wilson Jr.
Dallas?
Dallas.
Okay.
So he's the fourth receiver behind that amazing trio that we have heard of many times. But with the Cowboys, something's going to go wrong. And I'm not basing this solely on that, but last year there was all this talk about Amari Cooper pulled himself out of the game. You hear people like Skip Bayless hammering like Amari Cooper didn't want to play, that he quit on the team. I'm not saying that's true, but what if Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, or Cooper get hurt, or they're out for a few plays because they're tired? Cedric Wilson's the next man up, and he has the potential to pull off some big plays. Looking at his college stats at Boise State, 2017, 1,500 yards on 83 receptions and 7 touchdowns. 2016, 1,100 yards, 56 catches for 11 touchdowns. He's a touchdown. In college, he produced well, getting a very small amount of targets. Over his career, he averaged 19 yards per reception. He also ran a 4.55 40-yard dash. With the Cowboys, he has the potential to have some splash plays. He has the potential to fill in for one of those 3 receivers at any given point and just be this one guy who just comes out of nowhere and has a great game.
All right. Adam, what do you got this week?
Receiver Sean Poindexter. Know from where?
Wow, I don't think I do.
San Francisco. So he was actually an undrafted free agent last year, tore his ACL in the very last game after looking pretty good. And if you look at that receiver room right now in San Francisco, it's bad. Deebo Samuel's not going to play game 1. Brandon Ayuk is questionable. You're down to Trent Taylor, who I like, and guys like Dante Pettis, who's proven nothing, and Tavon Austin, who's on like his 47th team so far in his career. So really, the next guy up is, if anything, this guy is a youthful guy who's now healed from his injury, who's got a ton of speed, and fits perfectly in Shanahan's offense. So I think this could be either if not the very last pick in people's drafts, then definitely a week 1 waiver claim after they see him take the field San Francisco.
That's a good one. It's ugly right now. It's really ugly. I'm going to go with Dan Arnold, Cardinals tight end. He's done basically nothing. But Arizona doesn't really have a reliable tight end. They have Max Williams, but he hasn't really been a super big contributor. Dan Arnold has done nothing, but he had a crazy week 17, 4 receptions, 76 yards, and a touchdown. He played for the Saints a while ago, but I think what if he's a breakout candidate, and this is off the wall pick, but what if he's a breakout candidate and he becomes a trusted target for Kyler Murray in that offense, who really didn't have a reliable tight end last year?
Yeah.
All right.
Anything possible.
And any closing thoughts here?
Check out the store.
Check out the store. We will be having updates soon. I've been crazy busy trying to get stuff done, but those updates will be up soon. Make sure to follow Adam Ramirez Sports, Scott Logush, Logush52, myself, Trey Daubert. Check out the website, vendettasportsmedia.com. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Until next time, we will see you soon.